Good afternoon, everyone. If everyone can go to their seat, and we'll be starting this afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this very important side event, Turning the Tide, Advancing Science, Solution, and most importantly, cooperation on the tropical Atlantic sargassum situation. We're here at the Mama Shelter Hotel in the city of Nice alongside the 2025 UN Ocean Conference. So first and foremost, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the organizers, partners who made this gathering possible. So bear with me as I go through this very long list in alphabetical order that shows how the community comes together behind this crisis. And I would like to stress this point. So we have the Association of Caribbean States, ACS. We have the Agence de la Transition Écologique, ADEME of France. We have the Eastern Caribbean States Organization, the OECS. We have Expertise France of France. We have GeoBlue Planet, that's me. We have the Institute of Maritime Affairs from Trinidad and Tobago. We have the Institute, okay, sorry, I don't speak Spanish, so Instituto de Investigaciones Oceanológicas, sorry, from Mexico. We have the Marine Biodiversity Observing Network, MBON. We have Mercator Ocean International, that's me again. We have Seafield Solution Limited. We have the Sargassum podcast. We have Région Guadeloupe of France, and we have the UNEP Cartagena Convention Biodiversity Protocol, the SPORAC. So thank you again, because your leadership and commitment to regional cooperation are truly commendable, and your vision has brought together this diverse and dynamic group of stakeholders. We are deeply grateful to our funder, the European Commission, through the EU Ocean Ops Horizon project implemented by Mercator Ocean International. Your support has not only made this meeting possible, but also the dinner that will follow, and everyone is invited, of course. We warmly invite all of you to join us later for continued conversation and connection. So this event is part of a broader initiative that spans technical, political, and public engagement. Today, we focus on the science and the solutions, translating complex knowledge into actionable strategies, and to address the multi-phased sargassum crisis impacting the Caribbean, but the entire tropical Atlantic coastal regions. Just this morning, our colleagues from the Dominican Republic, the Région Guadeloupe, the ACS and the OECS hosted a very successful event in the Blue Zone, and we're delighted that they will soon join us on stage to share with you some key takeaways. So before we begin, some very quick housekeeping notes. This event is rich in content. It runs for a few hours. This is, again, a testament of the importance of giving sargassum crisis the attention it deserves. That said, we know energy can dip. So during short breaks between speakers, feel free to go to the side of the room. You'll find cookies and drinks. Coffee is also available, fresh drinks in the fridge. Feel free. Let's have a nice and engaging session here. Feel free to just get up and help yourself. We kindly ask the speakers to keep their allotted time, of course, to help us have a smooth and engaging session for everyone. And finally, we encourage you to actively participate in the discussions. Your insights are vital for shaping effective, inclusive solution. We'll be using an online tool. I hope you know it. It's called Slido, SLI.do. The keyword is obviously sargassum. So you can either use the code, should be behind me. It's not behind me anymore, but it will be eventually. Or you can use the keyword sargassum, as I was saying. So let us use this opportunity to deepen our understanding, strengthen our partnership, and chart course towards sustainable science-based responses that protect our coast, communities, and our shared ocean. Thank you, and let's begin. And without further ado, let me invite Lydia Barfleur. If we can have the slide, please. Come to it. Here we go. Here we go. For the session, right? All right.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you for those opening remarks. And thank you for including the Regional Council of Guadeloupe in this important panel. So let's dive right in this session that brings together leaders from government, regional organizations, and international agencies who are not only shaping the conversation on Sargassum, but also driving action. As you might know, the Sargassum crisis is not just an ecological event. It is a regional and trans-regional challenge affecting our economies, our biodiversity, and our coastal community. So the objective today is quite simple but critical. We have to build a political momentum, and we have to align regional cooperation on sustainable and resilient approaches to the Sargassum phenomenon. So let us now turn to our distinguished guest whose visions and commitment shape the future of our ocean and of our Caribbean territories. I'm now invite Mrs. Sylvie Gustave Diduflo, Dr. Sylvie Gustave Diduflo, Vice President of the Regional Council of Guadeloupe, which plays a leading voice in biodiversity governance and Caribbean cooperation and Sargassum through SARCOP 2 initiative, which is paving the way for a coordinated territorial approach. Sylvie, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the next step to take for the future and the work we have to make. Can I have the slide, please? Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, no. Wait a minute. There are so many side events on Sargassum. just a minute. Wait a minute. So this morning we talk about the national plan. The national plan who was presented by the ambassador Arnaud Montré. Already Mexico, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic had joined us, also OECS. So we're going to have next step to take. The first, the act to support from our state, our organization to have a resolution brought by the Dominican Republic to the UN General Assembly on the Environment in next September. The second step, continue to mobilize states and organizations to join the International Action Plan supported by Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and France, and OECS. We're going to have also to act to support through our states and our organization the international motion put forward by EUCN, France, and other partners to adopt a biological and legal definition of a statue of a Sargassum alga. It will be for the next World Conservation Congress in October, next October. We have also to mobilize to transform the stranding of Sargassum seaweed into economic opportunities through collection and valorization in accordance with the Global Gateway Program defined by the European Union and led by Grenada. And Grenada, we talk about after that. Implement the Sargassum subcommittee of the ECSC Commission and develop an ambitious policy and in the management of stranding. And we have also to implement the Interreg Caribbean SARCOOP2 program and continue to mobilize state and organization to join and participate to the SARCOOP2 program. So as you will see, we have a lot of work to do, but I think the Sargassum stranding make also a big opportunity to have a strong comparison between the states in the Caribbean through the Caribbean Sea. So we have just to move forward and to go to the international instances. And first of all, the one thing we have to keep in mind is that we just want intergovernmental instance has to be created to make management, to make global management of the Sargassum and the stranding Sargassum. So I will not be much long, but a lot of work to do, and I enjoy to hear you, all of us, this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Sylvie, for this presentation. Let us pursue with the Eastern Caribbean that represent a region where the impact of Sargassum has been felt intimately and persistently. So I give the floor to Ambassador Colin Murdoch, permanent representative of the OECS to Geneva, with a career dedicated to regional integration and international cooperation. Ambassador Murdoch, the floor is yours, sorry.
Thank you so much. And distinguished ministers, dear colleagues, friends, it's a pleasure and honor for me to deliver these opening remarks on behalf of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States at this important event, Turning the Tide, Advancing Science, Solutions, and Cooperation in the Tropical Atlantic Sargassum Situation. Let me begin by expressing warm appreciation to Geo Blue Planet for leading the coordination of this event, and to all co-organizers, Région Guadeloupe, the OECS Commission, Expertise France, SPORAC, ADEM, Mercator, UNEP, and many others. Together, we form a broad coalition that recognizes that Sargassum is not simply a regional challenge. It is a transboundary systemic issue that demands an integrated and collaborative solution. This year, that urgency has become even more sharply into focus. 2025 has brought with it one of the most intense and widespread Sargassum seasons. Large influxes are reaching areas that have rarely, if ever, been affected before. Communities once considered relatively safe now face rotting biomass on their beaches, hydrogen sulfide in the air, and an increasingly uncertain future. The impacts are multidimensional and deeply felt. Coastal ecosystems are under pressure. Public health systems are strained, and economically, our tourism sector, the lifeline of our small island states, is facing serious long-term risks. When visitors encounter beaches covered in sargassum, when livelihoods in fisheries and hospitality are threatened, the consequences ripple far beyond the shoreline. While significant attention has been given to the sargassum issue in recent years, we must acknowledge that the challenge remains, particularly in ensuring sustained coordination, access to financing, and the scaling up of effective solutions across the region. That is precisely what makes gatherings like today so valuable. This event and the many ongoing initiatives represented in this room reflect a growing convergence of science, policy, and action. They offer us a chance to share lessons, strengthen partnerships, and align efforts towards a more coherent and impactful regional response. Since 2018, the OECS Council of Ministers for Environmental Sustainability has recognized sargassum as a critical regional challenge. Ministers from our member states have called for, 1, a better understanding of the phenomenon, its sources, its drivers, its ecological implications. 2, stronger partnerships with research institutions. 3, scalable and context-appropriate solutions for monitoring, collection, and reuse. 4, knowledge sharing between member states, particularly learning from experiences and strengthening collaboration with our French member states, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and now, since March, Saint-Martin. Supporting pooled procurement and financing mechanisms, exploring economic uses that could turn a burden into an opportunity. These commitments form the backbone of what OECS has sought to advance over the past years. While progress is ongoing and challenges remain, we are building momentum. Allow me to take a moment to highlight the leadership of Region Guadeloupe, whose political engagement and regional solidarity have been instrumental in placing the sargassum issue at the forefront of regional and international attention. From hosting the first International Sargassum Conference in 2019 to actively supporting joint initiatives across the region, Guadeloupe has demonstrated consistent commitment in supporting regional dialogue, sharing experience, and mobilizing cooperation around this complex issue. The SARG Co-op program, which continues to evolve, has created a platform for dialogue, experimentation, and capacity building, one that benefits the entire Caribbean. In parallel, I wish to acknowledge the government of France, whose sustained commitment has been instrumental in placing the sargassum issue on the international agenda. France played a key role in drafting the Regional Action Plan, which was presented and discussed this morning during a high-level event hosted by the Dominican Republic. This process is a strong example that effective international collaboration This process is a strong example of what effective international cooperation can look like, with countries such as the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Trinidad and Tobago, and others playing a critical role in shaping both the scientific understanding and policy coordination needed to address this challenge collectively. We would also like to commend Grenada, which has taken an important step by engagement with the European Union through a dedicated call for proposals aimed at encouraging private sector investment in sustainable sargassum management solutions. This kind of initiative highlights the growing commitment in the region to not only respond to the crisis, but to mobilize innovation and financing in support of long-term solutions. As a concrete follow-up to the regional roadmap, we welcome the forthcoming project led by Expertise France, where the OECS will support integrated sargassum management and valorization in 4 OECS member states. There are strong synergies between the initiative and the broader action plan, both grounded in science, regional cooperation, and practical implementation, and we look forward to their complementarity in the periods ahead. This growing alignment between regional policy, scientific insight, and concrete initiatives is encouraging, but we must now focus on strengthening the bridge between research and implementation. For too long, the gap between research and policymakers has slowed our ability to respond collectively. We must do more to translate data into decisions and decisions into tangible community-level interventions. Likewise, we need to ensure that the voices of those most affected, fisherfolk, tourism operators, coastal communities, are not only heard, but are actively shaping the solutions we need. That is why today's event is so important. It is not just a technical session, it is a bridge between stakeholders, a space where scientists, community leaders, policymakers, and funders can exchange knowledge, share perspectives, build partnerships, and move forward together. Looking ahead, the OECS is committed to staying the course. We will continue to champion a regional, inclusive, and science-based approach. We will support the scaling up of best practices, the internationalization of responses, and the development of sustainable value chains for sargassum. And we will continue to work with our partners, many of whom are here today, to ensure that the Caribbean is not only reacting to this crisis, but taking concrete steps grounded in collaboration and science to turn this persistent challenge into a pathway for more sustainable, informed, and locally adapted solutions. Let me once again thank the organizers and all those contributing to this important dialogue. I look forward to the discussions and to the solutions we will build together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Murdoch, for this powerful and meaningful word. You underline the action taken by the DR at the Blue Zone Side event this morning. So I'm going to invite Mrs. Claudia Taubada, Director for Science, Technology and Environment at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, which is a country playing a catalytic role in the international response. DR is championing a proposed resolution on Sargassum at the United Nations Environment Assembly. So, Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lydia, and thank you everyone for being here and showing interest in a problem that affects over 30 territories in the Caribbean, Greater Caribbean, and we're adding to that, which is quite concerning. Some of my remarks here will be basically on talking about the event we had this morning. For us, Sargassum certainly for this government has been a priority concerning, because it affects tourism, which is the main income we have right now, and one of our main sectors from our economy. Added to that, it presented so many risks for biodiversity. As you may all know, when Sargassum, when we get the massive influx and they get stuck in the coast, they are causing coral bleaching. They're causing us to, some of our species to die when it emits heavy metals. When it arrives to our coast, it represents a higher cost for its recollection. And at first, we did have a lot of issues with the recollection when we had erosion of our beaches. Now we have more sustainable methods for recollecting it. But it still poses many challenges when it comes to making it productive. I mean, having that valorization that we want to try to build in the Caribbean, especially based on something that we cannot predict 100%. The amount or the influxes when they're going to come. We know they're going to come every single year, but we do not have certainty of the amount that was going to be in our territory. The other challenges that we've seen also, it comes to the energy sector. We've had already energy plants being affected when we use seawater to cool down the turbines, and then they get stuck with sargassum, even causing the loss of some technicians in this sense. For us, Sargassum has been a huge challenge, and we, as the ambassador mentioned, the meeting in Guadeloupe after we started this new administration under President Abinader's leadership, we did see that we had to take from that. The commitments that were made in 2019 were of utmost importance for the region. We understand that the COVID pandemic posed other challenges, and Sargassum was something that was relayed as secondary. But considering that we had such massive influx in 2021 and 2022, it was a topic that we had to take again. And that's why we, along with the European Union, hosted the regional meeting with the EU, and we took upon the commitments made in 2019. So our efforts have been based from the work that we've done as a region from so many years before. At the same time, recognizing the work that Mexico did for so many years, and to be very honest, that no one paid attention to. So that is one of the things that we noticed. No one was paying attention. We know that we are in a very complex geopolitical juncture. We know that we face many challenges after COVID, that the priorities were based in other places. But as we try to recover our economy from all the impacts of the pandemic, Sargassum came, and that made it quite difficult when you have an economy that's mostly and purely based on tourism. We've been very lucky to have a private sector, a private sector when it comes to hotels and such, that has taken a proactive approach. But we do know that it's not the reality or capacity of many other countries or territories that are being affected by Sargassum. So one of the things that we've done in that sense is not only positioning the topic in the agenda. We had the President of the General Assembly mention Sargassum crisis in his speech in 2023 after the past UN Ocean Conference. And one of the things that we said when we knew that Costa Rica and France were co-hosting this third Ocean Conference was, we need to talk about Sargassum, but not at a technical level. We've done that enough. We need political commitment. And we are very grateful that everyone has responded. This morning's event was a show to the commitment. It was for us very clear that the commitment is there, that we're going to work together, and that we have, as was presented by Ambassador Mentor here, the action plan that's going to give us at least a framework where we can start working towards a common solution. And one of the things that we discussed here was not only the challenges that we all are aware of and we know of, but also the commitments that we have, that we need to make in order to move forward. One of the greatest challenges is that even though we have many innovative solutions on how to use Sargassum and to make this into an opportunity, which was the topic of our event today, the thing is that it's too much Sargassum. There is no way any small-scale solution can, even if we have several of them, it's no way to address properly the issue. So we have to go back not only to what is this problem in a technical sense. We need to find exact causes of this problem. We have some ideas, but we have to have some determination on the causes of this problem, as was mentioned by the Environment Minister of Mexico. That she really explained that we need to start addressing the concerns that we have from contamination and pollution from Brazil, from Congo, and from other sources that could be enhancing this massive proliferations. We also had our proposal as Dominican Republic to have a draft resolution project and possibly to become a resolution in the next Environmental Assembly of the UN, which we believe will give us a formal space and recognition of the issue to actually be discussed in a formal forum and hopefully advance what we've put in this international action plan that we understand is the way forward that we have as a region, a sub-region, to address the issue. So without wanting to take more time, I'm not someone that likes to, I'm a diplomat, but I don't talk a lot, so which is very rare. But I do wish to say that we're very grateful for the turnout this morning, for the commitments made. We are looking forward on how we can actually build stronger cooperation. Our president said in his speech, he also, he stressed the need for us to recognize sargassum as a crisis, but also he made a very good point on how the ocean does not divide us, but connects us. And I think that for us, especially in sharing the Caribbean Sea, which is a smaller but more biodiverse and so rich a portion of the ocean, it's something that we need to protect. And sargassum, and certainly we don't want to see it as a threat to the conservation of such an important area, such a biodiverse, rich area, but we do want to see it as an opportunity. But for that to be an opportunity, and I'm mentioning here a bit the idea of our past Minister of Environment, it needs to have value for that. And that's what we're struggling on making. I know we have many partners from different banks, from different organizations and regional organizations, but we need still to work in a coordinated manner to actually find common solutions that we can bring value to this issue that we are facing right now. I congratulate us all because we had an excellent event with excellent turnout, with excellent proposals and interventions, and we're looking forward to continuing this commitment and this work together. So thank you, Lydia, for inviting me here today to give a brief overview of what we did this morning. Thank you.
Many thanks. Many thanks, Claudia. You have pointed out the importance of having international commitment on the Sargassum issue. France has been central to the International Action Plan on Sargassum. Ambassador Arnaud Montré, serving as the ambassador for regional cooperation in the Atlantic Ocean, brings a deep diplomatic perspective to the Atlantic strategy on Sargassum. Ambassador Montré, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, dear colleagues, dear partners. So we had formal speeches during lunchtime for the side event dedicated to Sargassum in Blue Zone, with remarks from environment ministers of the Dominican Republic and Mexico, and the French Minister for International Partnerships and Francophonie, together with the many remarks that were made on Sargassum, about Sargassum, during various conversations and panels and discussions. I think this gives an idea of the raising profile of Sargassum in the global conversation. Now, in this very engaging session, and congratulations to the organizers. Thank you very much for the Dominican Republic for the previous event, and for Geo Blue Planets and all the partners for today, for this event. Allow me a few informal remarks about this international action plan that we've just launched with the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and Mexico. As French ambassador for regional cooperation in the Atlantic area, it's a sheer pleasure to see 4 stakeholders in the Caribbean join hands to stress the importance of this issue at the international level and bolster inclusive regional initiatives to address Sargassum floods, which is becoming more and more acute. So what is this action plan, and where can you find it? This plan aims to serve as a shared reference. It brings together validated scientific knowledge and concrete lines of action with clear deadlines for 2025, 2026 to deliver a coordinated response to a phenomenon that has grown in scale. It is structured around 5 strategic pillars, each with specific objectives and a roadmap to 2025-2026. The first pillar combines 2 essential components: political recognition of this phenomenon as a regional and international crisis, and the definition of a common framework to address it. By supporting the Dominican Republic's proposal for a resolution at the next United Nations Environment Assembly, we aim to make this a global priority. The Cartagena Convention also provides a natural forum for formalizing this shared approach. The second pillar focuses on strengthening both fundamental and applied research. There are powerful research networks, such as the SARGNet network or the SARC program, coordinated by France and AFD. We need to continue and bolster them. The third pillar concerns the exchange of best practices and the sharing of experience. Let me stress the incredible amount of knowledge gathered by Guadeloupe and Martinique that are piloting environmental sensors, alert systems, and containment devices. There are also great initiatives that are carried out in other territories of the Caribbean. These innovations are pooled via the Sargassum Information Hub, supported by the EU and several states in the region. The fourth pillar calls for strengthened local, national, and regional capacities. The example of the SARCOP program in Guadeloupe, the coordinated actions of the Dominican Republic with its coastal municipalities, as well as public-private partnerships developed in Mexico, all illustrate the need to involve all levels of decision-making. And the fifth pillar is dedicated to sustainable valorization of Sargassum. Several sectors are being explored, such as biomaterials, biostimulants, and bioenergy. Let's focus on these perspectives and see what kind of initiatives can be taken to find lasting solutions to the challenge of Sargassum. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to our discussions and our further exchange to develop these initiatives collectively. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ambassador Manche, for this very informative presentation. Grenada has played a very active and fundamental role on Sargassum by establishing, in collaboration with the European Union, the Sargassum Regional Secretariat. And we're going to have on the floor Ambassador Safia Swane. She is a special envoy and ambassador for climate change for the government of Grenada, and she's going to address Grenada's position on this issue. Many thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Lydia. I'm going to sit because I'm often told I'm quite tall, and I think I'm much more comfortable presenting from here. But one of the things I'd like to do is to recognize my colleague, Ambassador Eno. If you're here, I'd like to actually have you come up just so that we can show you exactly how we work in Grenada. So the Sargassum issue initially was managed through our Ministry of Environment, Climate Resilience, and Renewable Energy. We have since recently launched a new ministry that's focused on blue economy and marine affairs. And supporting that ministry is my colleague, Ambassador Eno. And I think it speaks to the spirit of collaboration that we've all heard from the previous speakers when we think about what's needed to best address this issue of sargassum. We know as Grenada, we cannot do it alone. I think Ambassador Eno will speak later on in the session on the realities that we face on the ground when it comes to collection and processing. There is a lot of sargassum in our oceans. And when it washes up on our shores, it destabilizes the country. And as many have said, it destabilizes our tourism, but it also destabilizes our existing infrastructure and our existing capacity. Oh, great. Here we go. I prided myself on being able to project. Okay. And so this destabilization is part of the reason why we are setting up new structures and institutions within our government to ensure that we have the right kind of capacity, the right kind of policy environment, the right kind of people on the ground, and the right kind of narrative to our local population, to our CSOs, to our fishermen, to our NGOs, and to our business community. So we are quite proud on the efforts that we have taken to advance this ministry, and it's quite a lot of work that I'm sure Ambassador Eno is happy to share. But a couple of things on regional cooperation. We've heard the address by Ambassador Murdoch this morning on the opportunities that we can leverage from regional cooperation. For us, it's mandatory. This idea of working in silos cannot be used for this problem of sargassum management. And I think for those of you who know me, I'm very frank when I speak. I try to not stick too much to the script, but stick to the practical realities that we face. And so in sharing some ideas before I hand over to Ambassador Eno to talk about some of his work, I'd like to first acknowledge the leadership of Guadeloupe and of Martinique. I'd like to also acknowledge the leadership of the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and Mexico. Part of shifting the approach to this issue is supporting each other within a regional platform that allows for knowledge exchange, but allows us to build the kind of political will that sends a strong signal to the international community that we need to build our capacities to deal with this issue, and we need the right kind of financing and resources to do so. And so part of what Grenada hopes to do in our capacity is to join the leadership of these countries. And so we're considering joining SARCOP, these conversations we've had. And we're also considering supporting the regional action plan and declaration with some additional edits, if that's work that we can also do. I'd like to also mention before passing the mic to Ambassador Eno that we are very encouraged by the initial discussions that we've had with the government of Guadeloupe. We both sit within the OECS Commission. We both are represented by our ministers within the Council of Ministers of Environmental Sustainability process. It is a very important process for us where key decisions are made by our ministers that is guided by a policy framework that many of our governments have supported and endorsed. So this is the catalyst for our work. And it's really important as the government of Grenada that we work very closely with our country partners to help mitigate this issue. And I think in terms of the very last point I'd like to make is there's a limit to innovation and how much innovation can deliver on financing. And so part of the work that we're doing, which my colleague Jane Nurse will talk about a little later in the session, is around how we can explore the feasibility of valorization. But with that said, there's a lot of limits that we will encounter in setting up the processes to be able to reap the benefits. In the interim, we will need the support from the international community in the form of accessible grants. And so that's my very last point. Ambassador Eno.
Good afternoon or morning. Oh, afternoon. Just a note that I may step out mid-talk because I'm in the process of coordinating the ratification of the BBNJ. So that's why I may leave halfway. So I had a talk prepared, well, not a talk, but a presentation of some of the work that we are doing as it relates to sargassum management in Grenada. But Ambassador Soni abruptly got me in here, but that's how we work. So my task here is to just highlight our Blue Economy Ministry at this juncture. So in December let's go further back. So when the new government got into office in Grenada, one of the things that I was asked to work on is the blue economy. And I engaged Sophia at the time with the idea of creating a blue economy secretariat to look at all the blue economy activities in Grenada. So we went ahead, had meetings, discussed all the plans as it relates to formalizing a blue economy secretariat. Unbeknownst to me, the Prime Minister was aware of my plans and, working without my knowledge, created a Ministry of Blue Economy. So last December, I was called to the Cabinet office and the Cabinet Secretary told me my wish come true. So I thought, well, I'm getting my secretariat. Unbeknownst to me, I got an entire ministry. So it was a huge success for us. The ministry vision is what Ambassador Sony just spoke about in terms of the silos, because what do you happen in the small island states, particularly in Grenada, you have several entities with overlapping responsibilities for marine resource management. So you have the Ministry of Environment, you have the Ministry of Agriculture, you have the Fisheries Division, you have the Ministry of Tourism. And then oftentimes we end up replicating the same thing that is happening in the different ministries. Grants come to 2-3 different entities for solving the same problem. So we look at it more of a systematic approach to managing the blue space. So the ministry, the vision for the ministry is that we prevent that silo mentality from occurring. And it's the same thing at a bigger level. We are, just a sidetrack, I'm the chair for the OCM as well, which is the Ocean Coordination Mechanism for the next 2 years. And the OCM is aiming to do the same thing at a regional level because there are several, as you know, several different, even you look at something as Sargassum management, there are so much efforts that are ongoing right now as it relates to Sargassum management, whether it's OECS, whether it's CARICOM, whether it's individual sovereign nations and other entities. So one of the things that we have to look at is how do we collate all this information? At the OCM, we are not seeking to become the ones who are implementing, but just to bring the parties together. Because that communication, that lack of communication is a big challenge. We had our Sargassum conference last year in Grenada, and it was shocking to know that there is so much happening in other countries that we were completely unaware of. And even Guadeloupe is so much advanced in terms of what they do. We see a lot of things that we can adapt from what is happening in Guadeloupe, even the community engagements with the formal agreements with community leaders and so on to have Sargassum management at the community level. These are things that we can literally learn from them. 2 more minutes. So just want to say that what our ministry, the Blue Economy Ministry, aims to actually prioritize our marine space and see it for what it is as an economic driver of our economy. Tapping into new areas such as marine renewable energy, aquaculture, which is a big deal, which is almost negligible in the Eastern Caribbean. Aquaculture is not something new. It's existing and functioning all over the world already, but it's a matter of integrating that into our blue economy development proposals and projects. So at the Ministry of the Blue Economy and Marine Affairs, we are prioritizing the new and untapped areas for blue economy investments. So we're looking at marine renewable energy, offshore wind, tidal energy, thermal energy, fish farming, mariculture, and so on. So I would speak more on the Sargassum challenge from the political level and the actual on-the-ground impacts of Sargassum later on, but I think my 2 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Enoy and Ambassador Santier, for this local testimony on how Sargassum can be managed on a territorial level. Ambassador Swaney, you were talking about the question of valorization and the question of financement. The European Union plays a leading role on establishing a strategy in order to manage the Sargassum issue by making it an economic opportunity. So Livia Eliazura, Cooperation Officer with the Caribbean region in the General Directorate ENTPA at the European Commission, is going to give us a presentation on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Lydia, and good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, Directorate General for International Partnerships has been doing a lot, and in overall the European Union, on this very important topic of the Sargassum invasion. So I'll be glad to spend a few words on everything that has been achieved so far. So let me begin by thanking GeoBlue Planet and all the partners that have made it possible for all of us to meet today. Yes, we have been hearing since yesterday, indeed, that the buzzword Sargassum, the crisis has been escalating. We are almost reaching 40 million of tons this year. So what has the EU done in this regard? The EU has taken action as a strategic convener under the Global Gateway Strategy. What does it mean? It means that we advocate for turning this environmental threat into an economic opportunity. And we do it by investing in the development of commercially viable value chains. These value chains not only generate technology, but they also create jobs and stimulate growth and social benefits across the region. How do we achieve this? By bringing together all the actors in the space: private sector, the governments, the regional organizations, international financing institutions, companies, and researchers. For this initiative to succeed, there is a key condition. It does require a firm commitment on the side of the Caribbean governments to move forward with the collection. And this is the part that we notice we are missing right now. And it is also the starting point for any value chain to actually advance. We are also very proud of what has been achieved so far. So let me mention a few examples. In Grenada, precisely, we organized a high-level conference last year, which gathered more than 400 participants. And we supported the government in launching an open call for expression of interest for private sector proposals. As a result, today we have a pipeline of 13 investment-ready projects, and Grenada has committed to collecting and processing 10,000 tons of Sargassum by 2026. This important milestone will for sure serve as an example for the other countries in the region. And in Mexico and Dominican Republic, we are also advancing in a similar process of putting together technical and business solutions. And we have 2 ongoing task forces happening both in Mexico and Dominican Republic. Across these engagements, we are building a full value chain from collection and containment to processing and valorization into products such as bioplastics, biofertilizers, renewable energy, cosmetics, and agricultural inputs. We do it together with the European Union and its member states and the international financing institutions, hand in hand with the governments of the Caribbean, catalyzing private sector solutions. As has been already mentioned several times today, the economic benefits of this initiative are vast. By integrating Sargassum into waste-to-energy systems, we can reduce reliance on imported diesel, lower cleanup costs, and open fiscal space for other investments in the region. The key challenge now is to maintain unity of all the partners and to avoid fragmentation. As the interest grows for Sargassum, our collective success will really depend on collective approach, on providing support, on providing financing in a way that will collectively increase the chances of the Sargassum value chain to grow. And in this regard, allow me to finalize by inviting you all formally or reiterating the invitation that has been presented this morning in the high-level event to the 3rd Caribbean EU Global Gateway Conference that will take place in October in Brussels. This will be also the moment to consolidate and scale up what we have been talking about with regards to the Sargassum value chains, to reinforce political commitment and move decisively from plans to action. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And last, not but least, to end this high-level session, we now welcome Mr. Christopher Corbin, coordinator of the Cartagena Convention and UNEP. With decades of experiences safeguarding the Caribbean Sea, Christopher Corbin will remind us the value of multilateral environment agreements in addressing the Sargassum issue. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll join Sophia as well and get a little bit more relaxed. Colleagues, friends, champions, partners, one of the challenges when you have spoken at a high-level event in the morning and you look around and you see a lot of the same faces who were at that event, how can I say something a little different for the next 3 minutes that will still resonate? And one of the messages that has been conveyed this morning and again this afternoon is really about the importance of regional cooperation leadership in our collective, and I emphasize our collective response to Sargassum. I'm happy to say that all of the countries that have been identified as champions and leaders, hint, hint, are all contracting parties to the Cartagena Convention. They have been advocating through the convention fora for the work on Sargassum to be elevated. And I want to pay special recognition to our colleagues at our Regional Activity Center for SPOR in Guadeloupe, who have been working on Sargassum before Sargassum was an issue. So please, a round of applause to Lucille and Orion and all the team who have been working on this as an issue. I want specifically, again, to link to this idea of multilateralism. As was mentioned, we are in very sensitive geopolitical times, but the work through the convention, through our Marine Biodiversity Protocol, which again is celebrating its 25th anniversary on the 18th of June. Again, please, a round of applause. We people are a little bit too. This is the protocol that is actually driving the work on Sargassum, and we have been working very much through that protocol to establish a work plan, to establish a working group. I think I heard about 4 working groups over the last couple of days that are working on Sargassum, which is not necessarily a bad thing because it recognizes that there is a need to bring together experts from multiple areas working on a common issue. Where there is a challenge is if all the working groups do exactly the same thing and involve all the same experts. So definitely a need for regional coordination there. We have been working on a regional plan as well, and I dare say that that regional plan has probably had some level of input into the international plan that was highlighted this morning. The importance of regional planning, as has been identified, is that it allows us to focus on what are our most urgent needs as a region. It aligns the technical focus with the on-the-ground realities. And all of us who live in the Caribbean, that ranges from cleanup to monitoring to longer-term planning and investment. As has been mentioned, no country, no ministry can do this alone. Multiple ministries have to work together. But Sargassum is actually quite similar to a lot of the environmental challenges that we are facing, whether it be marine pollution, coral reef loss, biodiversity decline. It calls for a coordinated action and response. It impacts so many sectors at a country level. I was amazed when I went to the Dominican Republic and I heard of the impact it was having on power generation. I had never thought that was and leading, in fact, to really challenges in terms of how do we manage this moving forward. As I think Sophia mentioned this morning, we need regional strategies, but we also need national strategies and action plans because we are different country to country. We need the tools, we need the training, we need the resources. Having come from a small island myself, I would dare say we are not lacking in knowledge and capacity as well. It's a matter now of how do we maximize on those resources where we can learn from within the region, first of all, and then outside of the region. Might I add that this is not only a problem that's facing the Caribbean, and I've talked to my colleague who heads the Abidjan Convention. There is a great opportunity for collaboration across the Atlantic. We have heard of what's happening with Brazil, the Sargasso Sea. Again, at a somewhat global level, we need to bring these elements together. So national action, national strategies. But we also need to make sure that the issues of ecosystem resilience, pollution reduction, biodiversity conservation, these all have to be built into our response strategy. Sargassum is no longer a nuisance. When sargassum, oh, that's a nuisance. Oh, isn't that just a small algal bloom? No, it's not. And it has major impacts on our mangroves, our seagrass, our coral reefs that protect our shores. Importantly, now we need to scale up the early warning systems and the risk mapping. And we've heard of the work that's already ongoing in terms of satellite technology. We need to be able to predict, we need to be able to plan, we need to be able to respond to this without compromising that sargassum is actually a nursery. And if the sargassum is offshore and is not going to come to land, should we be encouraging it to be collected? Or should we be allowing it to function as it should function as part of the marine ecosystem? So as has been said, our strength as a region, and I'm really, really happy and really congratulate the entire grouping that has pulled these events together. Our strength lies in working together, the sharing of data, and not just of data, of information. We have data, but we don't have the information that is informing policy and decision making. The lessons learned, the best practices, how are we addressing this in different frameworks, in different coastal areas? It has to be science-based, and it has to be people-centered. The convention, we remain committed to work with all of you. We have a working group. How can we maximize on that which has already been established? Only a month ago, we actually saw the need to bring together the Sargassum working group with our marine pollution working group because of the linkages with nutrients. And is nutrients, and to what extent are nutrients a problem? I read an article, I think it may have been about a week ago, that researchers at the University of Florida attribute the recent surge this year, 2025, to a combination of climate change, fertilizer runoff, deforestation, and shifts in wind patterns and atmospheric pressure that is causing nutrient upwelling from the subsurface. How do each of these contribute to sargassum? We don't know. So we could spend all of our money saying it's a nutrient problem and then find out it's a climate change problem. So we need the research to work together. So in closing, let us continue to work, colleagues, friends, champions, side by side. Let's work together. Let's identify the national and regional leaders who we have. We don't need to go looking for them. Many of them are in this room. And let's use Sargassum as a model for resilience, cooperation, and sustainable development in the region which we so cherish. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Christopher, for this very dynamic presentation. This diplomacy dialogue today reveals the collective momentum we are building, not just to cope with Sargassum, but to transform it into an opportunity for innovation, resilience, and blue prosperity. Together we turn the tide. So thank you again to all our speakers for their clarity, for their energy and vision. So I think that we can applaud them. And yes. Sorry, comment? And yeah, oui, on peut. Oui. And I just invite you, the speakers to come to take a picture, to take a picture, all of you. Just come there, and we're going to take a picture of you. This is a formal exercise that we're doing after the event. J'essaie d'éviter les tables. Est-ce que je peux te proposer de bouger la table?
Thank you. No. So we're gonna move now to the second session of this meeting. If you can Pardon? Pardon? Parle-leur et puis ça sera bien. Mais Okay, so we're going to move forward. If you guys would like to chat, maybe go a little bit outside, and we'll resume this second session, which will be chaired by Clémentine Morisseau from Expertise France. And this short session will provide two overviews of two testimonies directly from the field. So Clémentine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for the insightful first session, which gave us some keys to understanding the phenomenon of massive sargassum strandings that have been affecting the Caribbean in the past 15 years. This second session now is an opportunity to learn about the underground institutional responses developed by some island states to deal with this phenomenon. And we will have the opportunity now to listen to two testimonies from the field. Firstly, from Grenada, with a second presentation, a second intervention by Ambassador Jerry Eno, who is a Grenada Special Envoy on Ocean and currently working on the implementation of a Sargassum task force in Grenada. And the second testimony will be from Martinique, with a presentation by Frédéric Voyer, director of the GIP Sargasse, which is a public body tasked with supporting local authorities and companies in the value chain in a coordinated response. So first, I let the floor to Ambassador Jerry Eno, that I see. Yeah. Ambassador Jerry Eno, the floor is yours for a 10-minute presentation. No more, just 10 minutes, please.
Here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Then you have the time here. I am pressing.
Thank you, thank you. My name is Jerry Eno. I'm Grenada's Special Envoy for Oceans, Blue Economy Advisor to the Government of Grenada, and Strategic Advisor to the OECS for Blue Economy and Oceans as well. Additionally, I'm the Chair of the Ocean Coordination Mechanism and the Chair of our National Ocean Governance Committee. So lots of hats, but they all linked. So today I'm going to speak on well, my second talk, I'm going to speak on the challenges that we have living with sargassum in Grenada. First, I want to give a bit of context. The challenge that we face with sargassum, from where I sit, it's a bit of political because I'm sort of a quasi-politician because I go between the politicians and the communities. So I often get cussed out. I often get, obscenities thrown at me that I'm not doing anything, we are not doing anything. So I have to face with this. And on the other side, the ministers and the prime ministers would ask, and the prime minister would ask, what are you doing? We got called into the cabinet office about 2 weeks ago to find out what's going on, because when the constituents go at the politicians comes at us. So I have to deal with that on top of all of the other commitments, all of the other plans, all of the other science, all of the other economic development that we are looking at for sargassum. So that's just a bit of context as it relates to sargassum management from where I sit. Now, the science has shown that the sargassum influx is just getting worse. I think the predictions for this year is 37 million metric tons, which is folds above the last peak. We are being affected, I'm gonna stand. We are being affected by the sargassum challenge in 3 main areas: the fisheries, tourism, and public health to a certain extent. Now, for the fishing communities on the east coast of Grenada, that's the major challenge that they are facing. In addition to that, because of the geography of the area, you have rivers coming into those bays as well. So you have a mix of runoff, gray water from households and businesses and so on, enter into those particular bays and combining with the rotten sargassum on the beach, which is creating unbreathable conditions. And you have the communities questioning what the government is doing. Are they doing enough? Are you spending enough money? And even though we spend considerable amount of money trying to collect and manage the sargassum challenge, it's never enough, because we term the sargassum challenge as a reoccurring natural disaster. It's just something that we guarantee is going to happen. And no matter how much money you throw at it, it's not going to solve that problem immediately. So we are doing this sort of emergency response all the time to manage a sargassum challenge. So this is just some influx that came in on our southern coast, which is not something that happens regularly. This part of the island does not get affected, but for over the Easter period, we had major mats coming in on the west coast of Grenada. Now, just a brief on what we are doing as the emergency response. We have collaborated with the Japanese government, who would have given us some boats, emergency equipment, mobilizing community cleanups and so on. But what we are aiming for is more of a strategic, systematic approach to the management of the sargassum. And that would include what we created, a sargassum task force, a cabinet-approved sargassum task force. So the proposal was sent to the cabinet. It was approved by cabinet to create a sargassum task force with 5 persons from different ministries and different organizations and private sector. Now, the task force, we try to make it small as possible, but effective as possible, because you don't want a large group that can't meet regularly. So we created a 5-member task force sitting on it, including myself. And what we aim to do is to strategize and develop a systematic approach to managing sargassum. Now, we do not want to have a task force that does not have legal authority or any teeth, as we say. So that's why it was a cabinet-approved body. Now, what that would do is coordinate all of the efforts for the sargassum management, including engaging regional organizations, friendly governments, and so on, to deal with managing the sargassum, so that when any question comes about the sargassum management, you know there is one place to go, and that would coordinate all of the management efforts into one entity. Now, what we are doing right now is engaging the OECS, the EU, as mentioned, previously, Jane will speak more on the EU engagement as it relates to sargassum management. But what we want to do is have a system-wide approach, because the sargassum is affecting all of the Caribbean in particular, but in terms of the OECS, we are looking at the OECS regional approach. And as mentioned previously by one of the speakers, that we had a call for expressions of interest, and we had 33 or 31 proposals, and we narrowed that down to 13. And what we are trying to do now is to action some of the low-hanging fruit. So one of the challenges that we have, obviously, is prediction and modeling. We are looking at instead of Grenada getting a package to do some satellite monitoring, we are looking at an OECS-wide package we'll share the software with all of the OECS countries who are participating in the project. Additionally, we are looking at offshore collection. Onshore collection has its challenges. You have sand being collected when the sargassum is being picked up. You have it rotting on the shore, creating the stench and impeding fishing activities, affecting tourism and so on. In the areas on the West Coast, when the sargassum comes up, these are the major tourist areas. Now, there are stories where a tourist is planning to come to a country and they would check on the internet to look at the sargassum situation before buying a ticket, because you don't want to buy a ticket and come to a beach and it is filled with sargassum. So again, that is affecting our tourism economy. So that's just from a strategic point, what we are doing. We are looking at some proactive planning with the real-time data and so on from satellites, which would give us and put us in a better position to manage the sargassum before it gets on the shore. And I actually saw some interesting research on the wall there that looked at satellite monitoring and remote sense for sargassum management. And these are actually the kind of things that we need to manage the sargassum. So that type of research is important for us, which would probably eventually turn into some tool that we can use. Right, so just Jane would speak more of that part, which is the valorization of the sargassum. And this is what I mentioned earlier. We had narrowed down the search to 13 proposals, looking at satellite tracking, collection, renewable energy development, other products from sargassum. What else? So the other thing that we are looking at developing is a sargassum management plan. Now, if we develop sargassum management into a place where there is significant economic activity that comes out of it. Right now, the sargassum is more or less a free product, byproduct of whatever we want to call it, for anyone to collect or anyone to pick up. Now, if you have a situation where sargassum becomes something that is valuable, who owns it? Who has priority in collecting? Is it the guys that turn it into energy? Is it the guys that turn it into bricks? Is it the guys who turn it into fertilizer? So again, parallel to all of the work that we are doing, we need to have a policy or strategy to deal with the sargassum, because it will create conflict. So one of the things that we are prioritizing as well is, in parallel to all what we are doing, is the aim to create a sargassum policy or management plan for dealing with sargassum, because you will have conflict once there is an economic value attached to something. So I think I did well. 30 seconds remaining. Maybe one question. Well, that is a serious challenge that you speak about, especially on the high seas. If persons realize sargassum has significant economic benefits, you would need, there you have to speak about maritime domain awareness and so on, and patrol and security. But I think if we have, maybe we can learn from the agricultural practitioners as it relates to predial larceny and so on, who owns it, who doesn't own it. But I think that's a security concern. that would eventually happen because the collection of the sargassum is mostly going to happen close to shore, maybe a few miles offshore and so on. But it still will create a challenge. Maybe you have to license persons who process in sargassum. These are things that we need to consider as well. Sure.
Because in Costa Rica, we have a similar problem that we have fluorine sargassum arriving, but also we have bentonic. And there's some people going into protected areas and collecting the bentonic sargassum. So I think communication of this topic is very important also, because there are also people that doesn't know about benthonic and pelagic. There are bentonic and pelagic species of sargassum. How can you manage the healthcare of people? You talk about in your slide. So do you have some captors for hydrogen sulfide and ammoniac? How can you manage?
So to be honest, that is something that we thought of. We will be engaging our Ministry of Health to deal with that aspect, because it is something that the Ministry of Blue Economy and the Ministry of Environment is aware of, and it was raised at a meeting a few weeks ago. So we realized that we still need to engage further with the Ministry of Health and the Environmental Health Department to look at that aspect of sargassum management. We will.
Thank you very much for sharing Grenada's experience with us. I will now inviting Frédéric Voyer, yes, from Martinique. So Frédéric is going to share with us Martinique experience, and especially the GIP, particular public structure, but you're going to.
Hello everyone, thank you to listen to me. My name is Frédéric Voyer. I'm director of GIP Sargass in Martinique, a new entity that has been built to deal with the sargassum management in all the value chain, since the meteorological checking to the valorization and helping all the people that have been touched by the consequences of the strandings of sargassum. I'm honored to speak today on behalf of the French island facing the ongoing crisis of massive sargassum influxes. This presentation shares the daily challenges we experience on the ground and the urgent need for coordinated international support. Please forgive my my French accent. English is not my native language, but if anything sounds too French, don't hesitate to blame the sargassum. Okay. So let's start the presentation. Okay. Since 2011, these trendings have become massive, recurrent, and increasingly difficult to manage. As you can see the cards of Martinique, you will see the costs that have been reached by the sargassum. Donc, you will see that the Caribbean coast is safe for the moment, but sometimes we can have some sargassum that hit this coast, but thanks to the different currents, they don't stay on the coastline. They go away. Sargassum affects all dimensions of life. Health, due to emissions of hydrogen sulfide, which can cause respiratory and neurological issues, especially in vulnerable populations. Environment, with the degradation of ecosystems, coral reefs, and marine life suffocated by the biomass. And also socioeconomic life, as tourism declines, fishing is disrupted, and coastal communities suffer daily nuisance and closures of public spaces. This is not a seasonal inconvenience, as we say, but it's a multidimensional crisis. In Martinique, and you can find also these profiles on other islands in Caribbean, geography amplifies vulnerability. Our coastlines are fragmented, often narrow, steep, or rocky, making access difficult for equipment. We need amphibious equipment to clean these impacted areas. It's in this situation that Sargassum strandings produce toxic gas, hydrogen sulfide, or also ammoniac. In many towns, homes and public facilities are just meters from the shore, increasing the exposure of populations. This is very little space for temporary storage of collected biomass, not in agreement with the standards. And we remain dependent on importing collection equipment, often facing delays and high costs. So it's very difficult to maintain the equipment in March because of the sargassum air, and it attacks all the metal, all the equipment on the mechanics, and they are often in out of order. This physical limitation demand creative, flexible, and localized responses. So I will make a focus on the different collection methods we have in Martinique. So on land, we use both manual and mechanized method. Manual teams operate in sensitive or difficult to reach areas. Mechanized collection relies on adapted tools, mini excavators, amphibious vehicles, and long winch arms for narrow reaches and accessible areas. Temporary deposit zones are created near the coast. Through space is limited and odors from decomposing sargassum are a challenge. Each intervention is a logistical challenge, balancing efficiency, safety, and community tolerance. Let's talk about the offshore collection methods. We are also experimenting with offshore collection to intercept sargassum before it reaches the coast. Floating barriers are installed to redirect or block the raft. Specialized boats, the sargator, and trained fishermen conduct at sea collection. This model is based on local partnership, particularly with the fishing community. In Martinique, they are paid for the work they have made on the offshore collection. But it's technically complex. Sea conditions, currents, and weather make operations uncertain. It remains an emerging but essential line of defense. We need to increase the quantity of this organization, more sargators, more fishermen, more barge. For a year like this one in 2025, overflow is not sufficient. Barriers are full of the sargassum, and the sargassum can sink or overflow and reach the coast with the sanitary consequences. So, one major issue is fragmenting governance. Responsibilities are split between the states, regional government, and municipalities. Many small communes lack of capacity in staff, budget, equipment, or organization to respond properly. So the GIP has to improve the way to fight against the sargassum by coordinate all the forces in Martinique. This is where the GIP Sargass plays a central role, acting as a territorial coordinator, technical advisor, and facilitators across all actors. Still, we must go further towards simplifying and empowering local intervention. Another big problem is the financial one. And each measure stranding can cost hundreds of thousands of euros from collection, transport, storage, and disposal. These costs are recurring, unpredictable, and heavy for small municipalities. It's also a way that the GIP can help the community to fight against sargassum. Sargassum management needs dedicated and sustainable funding, not just emergency aid. We opt to develop an economic model around sargassum management that will allow us to supplement the funding provided by the state. Some avenues are currently being explored. So the perspective, to move forward, we are advocating for four strategic directions. First, official recognition of sargassum events as natural disasters, which would unlock faster institutional support. Regional cooperation to pool resources, coordinate intervention, and share innovations. Sustainable valorization of biomass under safe and profitable conditions. International support, because this is not a local issue, it's a transboundary challenge requiring global solidarity. So for the conclusion, the French islands and the whole Caribbean islands are on the front line, facing a crisis that threatens health, biodiversity, and local economies. We need to protect our population and ecosystems while ensuring equity for territories with limited means for the moment. This is why the role of the UN Ocean Conference is crucial to raise awareness, to structure international aid, and to give visibility to these concrete realities on the ground. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to discussing further review, if you want. Thank you. And sorry again for my English.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your two testimonies, Mr. Voyer, Ambassador Hinault, which gave us two testimonies that emphasized the importance of governance and multi-actor, multi-level coordination at national and island level, and the various in between the various players in the value chain. We're now going to look at the scientific advances that are leading to new solutions, and I give you back the mic.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will be chairing this third session. I hope you can still listen. You still have some blood sugar. We decided that after this 4 presentation we'll have actually a short break just to let people walk around. And so what we will do is that we'll ask you to ask the questions to our speakers during the break. So you'll see their faces, so you can just walk to them. Anyway, so we won't be using Slido, but what I want to say is that Sargassum is something great for some people. Sargassum is something awful from some other people. And for a lot of us, it's both at the same time. We all have complicated feelings, mixed feelings when it comes to Sargassum. And I think that's what we wanted to do with these 4 presentations. So we'll have a first presentation explaining to you what is Sargassum from a biological point of view. What are the ecosystem services? And then we'll move on to like, how do we measure it? How do we use satellite to do that? How do we do models to enable forecast and do early warning systems? And then we'll look at the economical value of Sargassum. No, sorry, I'm forgetting one. Okay, this is embarrassing now. So, the impacts. Okay, no, first the value in the blue economy, because as the ambassador was just saying before, actually the 2 testimonies were saying before, Sargassum can have and should have a value in its transformation. And then the last presentation will be about the impacts, how Sargassum is impacting the economy. So without further ado, I will call on the stage Professor Cindy Fernandez Garcia from the University of Costa Rica. And she will be giving us this first presentation on how Sargassum is supporting biodiversity and ecosystem services. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I am marine biologist. I am also a specialist. I am phycologist. which is persons that we study marine macroalgae or algae in general. And well, this is not here. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit of floating sargassum in the Atlantic and the Caribbean and how sargassum supports biodiversity and its ecosystem services. I'm going to talk a little bit of the other face of this coin, and I'm gonna show you how sargassum is a very important algae in our marine ecosystems. So what is sargassum? Sargassum is a brown algae. Is not a plant, is not an animal, is not a fungus, is not a protist, is not a bacteria. I mentioned those kingdoms because sargassum doesn't belong to those kingdoms. It belongs to a kingdom, to a completely different kingdom that is a chromis. And chromis is a kingdom that is a sister of a plant kingdom. And many of these organisms do photosynthesis, which is that they make food for the rest of the organisms. So it's a brown marine macroalgae, and there are over 350 species of sargassum around the world, and we can find them in tropical and subtropical regions, mainly between 24 and 30 degrees Celsius of temperature in the water. And the first people that talked about sargassum were the Portuguese navigators when they go sailing from Europe to America, and they look at this algae that's floating in the sea, and they name it for a grape that is in Portuguese and is sarga, so that's the name sargassum. And it was described in 1820s as a genus, a scientific genus as we know it today. And one of the morphological features that how we recognize sargassum is because of the air blades, and in the floating species that there are two species of floating sargassums, natans and fleetans. We found a lot of these air bladers, and they are full of air. And it is important to recognize many of the ecological roles that sargassum has. For example, we can find as coastal forests. Sargassum is a very important species, or all the species of sargassums are very important in coastal forests. They form habitats. And we can find them on rocky reefs. We can find it on open oceans, as we all know. And it is very important that in most of these places, there are nursery places for many invertebrates and other algae. And we found them all little crustaceans, little worms, all the marine flora and fauna that we can find is in these habitats. And it also is a shelter for those animals. And as Paola was telling, we can find sargassum in two different habitats. We found them as benthic species that are attached to the bottom, that means, and also we found sargassum as floating, as the species that we are talking about in this session. So this is one of the maps. This is a map of 1891. People from these years already know this sargassum, and it's called the Sargassum Sea, and it's a very important ecosystem, and we have to protect this ecosystem because it has a lot of ecological services to the humans, and we depend on them. And for example, in Costa Rica, we have reports of sargassum since the beginnings of the 90s. And from all the Caribbean, we have these reports of sargassum fleetans and natans around the world. And it's very common to find these species in all the herbariums of the region and around the world. So why is the Sargassum Sea important? It's because there is a lot of biodiversity that is in this ecosystem. And there are over 100 species found, and there are many species that are endemic. It means that the species are just only found in this ecosystem. For example, this fish, and many of these species have mimetic forms that they look like a sargassum. So it took for these organisms a lot of years of evolution to get into these forms and morphological features. And we have a lot of fish that depend on sargassum. We have crabs, shrimps, gastropods, juvenile turtles, and it is important for feeding and breeding of many marine organisms. So what are the ecosystem services from the human point of view that sargassum has? We have provisioning ecosystem services. For example, this ecosystem is an habitat for commercial fish species. We also found regulating ecosystem services as potential carbon sequestration. And we also have supporting services as biodiversity, maintenance, nurseries, shelter for many marine organisms. So what is happening now is that we have this natural Sargasso Sea that for many years have been there, needs an ecological importance, and now we have a big biomass that is in the South Caribbean that is affecting all of us. And as I begin, this ecosystem is two sides of the coin. In both, is an essential marine habitat and a coastal nuisance when it accumulates on beaches. And I'm gonna finish with some message I wrote, and that sargassum is a symptom of a sickness, actually. The oceans are sick. And we are putting a lot of money in fighting the symptom, not the sickness. So we need to move into the sickness, temperature, nutrients. We have to know more about the sickness, and it's not sargassum the real problem that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for this very insightful presentation. And now we'll be moving on to another inspiring colleague of us, Nikia Gooding. She's from the Institute of Marine Affairs. I thought it was Marine Affairs, Trinidad and Tobago. And she's also part of the, we're really lucky to have her in the Sargassum working group of Jobu Planet. Someone talked about 4 other working groups, but ours is the best, Chris. So the floor is yours, Nikia.
And the most consistent working group. Okay, so I am tasked with going through a bit of how we do satellite tracking and forecasting of sargassum in about 68 minutes. I will not be covering everything. It's not possible because unfortunately within the region, we have a number of different entities doing similar things. So that's just to start with. So yes, this is on our north coast of Trinidad and Tobago. As mentioned before by both of the testimonies, sargassum is now beaching on areas where it never appeared before, and in countries where it's never appeared before. And that is going to only increase over time. So how do we monitor for sargassum? Monitoring is essential. It's the first step in any kind of response and management. You need to know where it is before you know what to do. And so to be able to do that, this is the science that gives you that information. There are different types of monitoring, whether it's in situ, so ground measurements, whether it's a person seeing it with their naked eye, or someone taking a picture with a camera, a drone, or aerial photography if you have those resources, which I know many of our islands do not, and satellite imagery, and those last 3 will fall into remote sensing techniques. So the reason, is it possible to move this little camera view? Sorry. If you want to put in the left corner, that's fine, but the right corner, okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the reason why I included this graphic that I made is simply because I wanted to bring to your attention, there are different types of imagery, but also there are different resolutions, so different levels of detail that you can get from different products. And we have a lot of small islands in the Caribbean. So if you're using very coarse imagery, it's not helpful for the local stakeholder. I cannot look at a fisherman and tell him with any degree of certainty that there is going to be a beaching because of this clump of sargassum that was found in the Caribbean Sea 5 days ago. However, if you use smaller scale imagery, so imagery like Sentinel-2 versus a larger scale image, it is then going to be able to give me a greater degree of certainty to inform this fisherman. I think everyone has been mentioning the records that has been broken. So the Sargassum watch system out of the University of South Florida, that's their optical oceanography laboratory. They're one of the longest standing providers of data and information for Sargassum. And they did this analysis which looked at the month of May from 2011 to now. And it basically looks at the amount of sargassum, right? So for all of the regions besides the Gulf of Mexico, there were records broken in May. There was way more sargassum beaching than any May in record before. And it's only going to be assumed that every May from then on is going to have more records. So in April, we got like 31 million tons. In May, it was 37.5, and that's the figure that you're hearing everybody quoting is from this analysis. And essentially, it's just looking at the fact that in the whisker boxes, so in the white boxes, all right, it's working everywhere else but this screen. So in the white boxes, we have the vertical lines where we have 25, 50, 75, and then the historical record. Are you seeing the orange? Because that's me. Okay, so that's clear. Good. We can move on. And this is just a list of current monitoring. So we have a lot of different countries doing monitoring for their governments and for their stakeholders, which is all well and good because we all have different needs and we all have our members of state that we have to respond to. The forecasting, however, now looks at not just near real time, but what is to come. And so in a nutshell, it is the first system that you can use for early warning systems. Being able to say that you're expecting a certain amount of sargassum is very helpful for early warning system. And so this is the first tool that should be in your arsenal. There is a lot of research already going towards the physiological cycles of sargassum, but also there is a lot of research still to be done, which I'll cover a little bit later on. And there are different types of forecasting products. So some of the very popular forecasting products that are currently being used are shown here. We have the SAM tool, which is the upper left. This is a proprietary tool. It is not freely available for governments in the region, which is also another constraint that presents itself. It is very helpful, however, so if you do have a partnership, I would say cultivate and keep that partnership near and dear to you. It uses the Sentinel-3 and MODIS over time, as well as some NEMO monitoring. So it's able to look at the tracks or the current flows to say where it's likely for it to go. It has a 5-day mean. The problem with this is just that, again, we have some islands that are not even showing up here, right? How am I supposed to look at someone who has a turtle NGO and they're looking at the impact of the sargassum as it comes in and how it's affecting these hatching turtles? I can't, right? We also have some other products. So this one in particular in your top right, so you 4C, it is a very interesting R&D application that's being put forward. It is using NEMO modeling, which is actually more scaled for our region. So it's a bit more accurate in that regard. And they were one of the first persons for the year, I believe, that put out a big product and alarmed a lot of people in the region because they were like, what, in March we're going to get how much sargassum? Unfortunately, in June is going to be more, and in July is going to be more as well. But again, this is along the lines of what's more accurate in terms of what to expect. The lower left corner, we have the Meteo France forecasting tool. So what I like about what they do is it's a risk as well. So they give a bit of a risk analysis before they say this level is going to happen or whatever. We do have other products that do something similar. So NOAA also has an in addition risk modeling. Their current model is a little coarse, but it's still really, really helpful because it covers more of the region. And then in the lower right, we have the EDITO Sargassum drift modeling. So the EDITO is from the European Digital Innovation. It's kind of aligned to like the digital twinning that the EU is putting forward. And their drift modeling really looks at the different EEZs in the region, so it's kind of unique in that regard. And then advances. So this is like the fun part for me, but it also should be an exciting part for you because it means you're able to now be able to inform your local governments and your local leaders and communities as to what they can expect and how they can respond. So very, very exciting is like out of the SARC project, they are developing tools using machine learning, using AI. So it's less manual because you know in the region, we have less experts. And so we're often wearing multiple hats. If you can make something semi-automated or, you know, even trained, that you can spend a little less time, you just need to confirm and issue a report or share a communication product, it makes your life a bit easier, right? So very exciting work that those machine learning tools are coming out and that someone is able to dedicate that time and develop it for our local and regional conditions. The other thing that's very interesting is the quantification through the vertical profile. So before we were kind of limited to like that superficial estimation of how much sargassum is coming through, but there's now some very promising research and it is able to actually look at what's not just how thick those mats might be or just how it's flowing through the water column. We also have been seeing, as mentioned before by some of the speakers, some of the tools that they've been using for the drifting and the collecting of sargassum. There have even been some research with machine learning and prediction. And that is also very exciting because we're getting more and more accurate, but we're also getting things that help us to make better decisions. There is a bit more work that is being done for downscale climate change models, and that is an application that could be brought forward to sargassum. So that is a future advancement that people are now getting into in terms of climate change modeling because they're realizing it's one of the feeding factors for sargassum blooms. So I just wanted to take a second to recognize that there are a number of gaps, right? So we live in the tropical Atlantic, which means there's always cloud cover. And the problem with that is if you're using an optical sensor, so an RGB sensor, you are going to get clouds in your imagery. More than likely throughout those years, especially when we have a lot of influxes of sargassum, which means you're not going to be able to see everything that you should be seeing if you're using that type of imagery. The other thing that I wanted to just make note of is we would have talked a little bit about nutrient upwelling. There isn't as much biogeochemical modeling that is being done in this region, and that is one of the contributing factors to these sargassum blooms. Until that gap is filled, we are not going to be the best informed that we can be. As well as I mentioned earlier, a little bit more climate change focused modeling so that we can again have more information towards what is to be expected as we get more of these blooms. We need finer scale imagery. We are small islands. The coarse imagery is a good indicator of what is there, but we can't make the decisions we need to make at this stage of the crisis without that finer scale. And the top call there is just because we have a number of tools and a number of things that are already being developed, but they need to be shared throughout the region. We do have expertise in the region. We have the tools in the region, but they need to be shared widely so that they can be used by everyone who is being impacted by sargassum. And as I mentioned, more and more countries are being impacted. There was actually a news story very recently on a coast in Colombia that was never impacted by sargassum that is now being impacted. And they're like, what is even this thing? Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
I like the conclusion. What is even this thing? All right, let's move on to, sorry, our next speaker. This is John. Yeah, John is here. Perfect. He'll be telling us about unlocking sargassum value in the blue economy from his private sector perspective. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not a scientist. Just to caveat that, we are a science-led team. So we have 4 PhDs and a professor emeritus in a 15-person team. So we're very science-focused, but we are a private sector company that's looking at ways of valorizing sargassum seaweed. And we do, I'll touch on this a little bit more later, but we do it for an in-water storage solution. And ultimately, what we're looking to do is create an economy around sargassum that ensures that there are long-term long-term secure jobs, not seasonal jobs as they currently are, because it's a seasonal feedstock, and to create an export market opportunity for the Caribbean, where there's not too many other export market opportunities. This picture, you can just about hopefully see this picture. You've seen lots of pictures like this today, but I use this because you can kind of see this lighter gold color here. And this is the seaweed while it's still at its most valuable. As soon as it starts turning this darker brown color, it's started to lose its value. And so if you put up defensive barriers, the seaweed's still going to asphyxiate behind those defensive barriers. So this is quite a big problem. A linear current, which the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt is kind of housed in, if you will, is not its natural home. The Sargasso Sea is a subtropical gyre, and so it's used to being in this kind of circular current where it's constantly moving. And so this is where you're getting all of that biodiversity loss, and you're also getting all of the economic value loss. So that's the fundamental problem that we need to try and solve, I think, to unlock the value of sargassum. To put that value change in context, so on average, it costs around 1,500 euros per ton just to treat it as a waste product. So that's all the defensive barriers, the labor, the harvesting machines, beach tractors, all of this stuff, right? It grows in value quite quickly. And yet its actual value to industry is between 3,000, in some valorization pathways, as much as 15,000 euros per ton. So it's very valuable, but how do you unlock that value? These are some of the product pathways and some of the companies working on this. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. These are just the companies that Seafoods is working with. So carbon capture via biochar, Rubisco is working on that solution. Emulsifiers, so this is quite valuable to industry, and Carbon Wave's got the first ever seaweed-derived emulsifier product derived from sargassum. Textiles, fillers is a growing sort of segment. Biostimulants, so the sargassum has both growth hormones and sugars that are valuable if you put them on terrestrial plants. They can help boost terrestrial crop growth. What's quite exciting about that as a product pathway is you get that from your sort of first press of the seaweed. So it doesn't stop any of these other pathways becoming viable either. So you can sell effectively the same ton of seaweed multiple times. And then there's biomaterials such as adhesives, coatings, other kind of chemicals that are derived from the polysaccharides. And eventually, the cost curve isn't quite there yet, but eventually biofuels. And then things start to get very interesting once we manage to get the cost much more efficient around the production of that. So how do we unlock the value for those pathways? This isn't a definitive answer. This is just kind of where we are, I think, a bit of a snapshot at the moment. We talked a lot, and Nick here did a great job of talking about the satellite sort of models that we're building or imagery that we're sort of capturing. But it's quite fragmented. And as Nick here pointed out, you know, some of it's behind paywalls, right? So you have to actually pay for it either as a private sector company, and the costs are quite expensive to private sector companies, or it's not always readily available to governments, and it's quite fragmented. So I think a sort of move towards more aggregation of that data and building better predictive models will work better for the public sector, because there's no way of us building defensive barriers across every single bay in the Caribbean. It's just going to be too expensive. So we're going to rely on those predictive models to know where to intervene and capture that value before the sargassum starts to decompose and then you lose that value. The other thing is supply chain optimization. So you can effectively arrest decomposition by squeezing the water, the moisture out of the sargassum. But you typically got to get it onto land or develop a new technology to have processing on boats. And you've got to process it within really about 6 hours of taking it out of the water to preserve most of that value. And then that stabilizes the liquid for biostimulants, and it stabilizes the pulp for all these other product pathways. So then that buys you time. But of course, the Caribbean, lots of small islands, doesn't necessarily have lots of space to stockpile lots of seaweed on land. And Nick here also showed that visual from last year where the sargassum dropped to about 5 million tons, and it's going to be about 40 million tons this year, probably by the end of it. You know, these are huge disparities in numbers. So as a supply chain that relies on certainty, as supply chains do, that makes them quite uncomfortable. So actually last year was the first year where some of the product companies that are already supplying to industry right now ran out of seaweed. That's insane, right? When you think there's so much seaweed, they just didn't stockpile enough of it to then actually meet the demand. So of course, that's just going to have a knock-on effect of less demand. So we've got to try and solve that problem. If the demand is there, which it's kind of nascent, but it's moving in the right direction in that respect, then we can definitively solve the Sargassum problem. But we need to solve the supply chain optimization problem first. And then I'm biased with this one because it's the solution that we're kind of working on the most, which is, I think, the real opportunity to unlock the value of Sargassum, and that's in water storage. So we've worked on this is our prototype in St. Vincent that we deployed in Mount Wynn Bay for several months. And that kept the seaweed fresh for the entire time it was contained within, and it also importantly preserved all of the biodiversity that was living around that seaweed. And it meant that we could provide sort of the lab scale product companies with Sargassum even when there weren't Sargassum influxes, and that was quite important. Just to sort of emphasize the need for that, if you're thinking about investing quite a lot of money in expensive processing equipment, and these things can cost tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, right? So it's quite expensive processing equipment. It works really well if you have a nice regular supply of seaweed coming through every day. But the reality is you're much more likely to have very, very high influx days where you actually end up with more seaweed than your processing facilities can process. So you end up throwing a lot of that seaweed into landfill. And the product companies need to factor in to their life cycle assessments. Sorry, there's an automatic, I'll keep it on that. Need to factor into their life cycle assessments any wastage from the Sargassum that's been thrown away by the product companies. So just let that sink in a little bit. So you're charging a green premium because your product has been derived from natural resources, and then you've had to factor into your life cycle assessment the seaweed you threw away because you weren't able to valorize it in time, and all the subsequent methane emissions that have come from that. And you could end up actually not having a more eco-friendly product than you initially might claim. And then on really, really low influx days, all your expensive equipment then is underutilized, or worse, not utilized at all. So it's not optimal from a sort of supply chain perspective. In water storage, however, means rather than throwing the seaweed away, you can put it inside a paddock where it stays fresh. And then on low influx days, you have seaweed to process. And then combining that with the satellite data and the predictive models, you can then over-harvest, clear your paddocks, and ready them for a very, very large influx. And so that just helps to moderate or regulate, should I say, the Sargassum influxes. And it also means that seasonal jobs then turn into year-round jobs. As mentioned or touched on, and a few people have spoken about this in the room today, the biodiversity conservation is obviously a really important point. So this type of approach ensures that we preserve as much of that biodiversity as possible. What we found in Mount Wynn is that it became quite an attractive sort of tourist destination because it's almost like a coral reef floating on the surface, right? So it's a fish aggregator and makes quite an interesting diving and snorkel site. So a lot of the conversations we're having are with hotels that want these outside of their properties. And then we don't need to involve the public sector at all. This can be entirely financed by the private sector. And then they get to see some of the benefits of some of the revenue share from the outputs. And so we can almost bypass that sort of government intervention as a necessity and fund this entirely via the private sector. And then finally, the value to the fishers was quite significant. We always do stakeholder engagement before we deploy anything with the local fishers to ensure that anything we're building doesn't block their sort of fishing routes. And in fact, they quickly enjoy what we're doing because it aggregates all the fish. So they can come down, and we had spearfisher folk fishing the larger jackfish that were trying to get the smaller fish swimming underneath. And so actually it was supporting their livelihoods rather than damaging their livelihoods. So hopefully that's given you a bit more insight into some of the things that the private sector are working on to help valorize this wonderful seaweed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I was saying, conflicted feelings about this Sargassum, right? Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I truly think that the answer lies in the collaboration between the private and the public sectors, for sure. I'm stepping out of being co-chair here, but I just want to add something actually to Nikia's presentation earlier, because we're talking about like megatons of sargassum. We're not able to measure the quantity, the biomass of sargassum right now. So it is a rule of thumb, right? We have the area, the surface area from space, and then we transform this into tons, which means that we basically have this hypothesis that the sargassum is always more or less the same density. But we know that sometimes it's contracted or deep, sometimes it's really loose. So that's an area where the wonderful working group of Geowood Planet is working on, is really putting more effort in there. And that means going at sea. That means having in situ measurements to be able to do that transformation. And actually, we have a small bit of SARCOP2 working on this with CLS. And we can talk about this later if anyone's interested. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking now and give the floor to Aurélie Rossignol from the World Bank, and she will be telling everything we need to know about sargassum impacting the coastal zones. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have the heavy task to keep you awake. This is the last session. I'm not sure this is the most interesting, but I'll try to keep you awake. So I'm here on behalf of the World Bank team. I'd like to just say hi to Patrick, who's online and who's leading this exercise. So I'm just the representative today to try and share some insights on the impact. Can I have the click, please? Thank you. Because then I'm going to lose everyone. Thank you. This work draws from both operational and recent studies work that we've been doing in the region in Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Belize. Our engagement is anchored into a 15-year UBEC program. You might have heard of that, the Unleashing of the Blue Economy of the Caribbean, which focuses on fisheries, tourism, and solid wastes sectors that are central to the sargassum response. While we've made progress, there's still much we don't know, and we're aware about that, and much more that needs to be done. So, I mean, this is something you already know that we've been discussed largely, but what kinds of impact we're talking about? So it's been mentioned in the high-level session that there is like competitive, I would say, positive role within the ocean, negative role in the coasts. But we have categorized and based on a literature review into 4 categories, the negative impact that sargassum can have, with obvious ecological impacts on coastal ecosystems, as has been said, on mangroves, coral reefs, and seagrass meadows. But these are not just environmental losses. These also undermine food security, livelihoods, and other themes related, for instance, to climate resilience and adaptation. Then we have the economic impacts on fisheries and tourism. So in the Caribbean region, tourism accounts for over 11% of the regional GDP, with more than $85 billion in 2023. And fisheries, while contributing less to GDP, remains crucial for employment, and especially in the island nations, as it's always already has been said as well. But related to these economic impacts on fisheries and tourism, there's also a huge component, which are the cleanup costs that can be quite considerable as well. In some cases, they're absorbed by tourism industry, and in others, in the study that we made, they are absorbed by public expenditure. And then, at last but not least, the health impacts on local community that also can play a huge role in a holistic approach to address this issue. Then, why exposure matters? So one important point also is the geographic exposure, which is crucial to elaborate tailored solution. So sargassum doesn't eat coastline evenly. So in Grenada and St. Lucia, most resorts are on the west coast, while the heavily affected East Coast is home to fishing communities, not undermining the potential impact on the East Coast, as the ambassador was saying earlier, but that's very different, for instance, for places like Mexico and the Dominican Republic, where tourism and sargassum landfall overlap directly, and where tourism sector drives the response. This difference means that models from elsewhere are good, regional cooperation is key, but still it may not translate well to the Eastern Caribbean. Instead, we really need also to include in this regional collaboration context-specific strategies that reflect local exposure, vulnerability, and institutional capacity. So now let's zoom in on fisheries. So from the study that has been conducted on the fisheries side, the impact of sargassum is largely negative. Our study in St. Lucia, for instance, found that three main effects. For instance, on the quantity side, we noticed there's an overall decline in fish biomass catching during sargassum influx. There is also a morphology angle with a higher catch of juveniles in key species, such as young dolphin fish. And then also on the composition angle with a shift from high-value species like tuna and flying fish to lower-value alternatives. And finally, there were also some operational challenges, like landing sites get blocked during heavy influx, and giants and gear are damaged by entanglement, as in Martinique we saw in the previous presentation, and navigation becomes harder, raising fuel costs. So what's interesting is how sargassum forms also matters. If you see on the right-hand graphic, large mats can act like fish aggregating devices and are easier to navigate around. But when sargassum is scattered and patchy, the damages and disruption increase and income can drop drastically. For instance, the yield range remained between $50,000 and $65,000 for bigger mats, but it drops significantly and potentially turns into negative to other formations. Then on the tourism side, hotels and shoreline activities are highly also exposed to sargassum influx, while the water-based activity of alternative location, in this case studies and in this case sites, while still being obstructed in high-intensity events. But the biggest direct impact that we noticed is the cleanup cost, as we said in the beginning. So for instance, the results often have to remove sargassum multiple times a day during the peak season. And in St. Lucia and Belize, this has cost individual resorts up to 2.7% of their annual income. On the occupancy impacts, it's harder to quantify, but many other hoteliers report that guests who experience heavy sargassum influx say they won't return. So even for now, if we cannot quantify the occupancy rate, there's a negative comments in the experience of the visitors. So what's important here is that larger operators can often absorb these costs, but smaller ones struggle more. So this suggests a role for government policy, for instance, easing import restriction on cleanup equipment and providing guidance on safe sargassum disposal to protect health and ecosystem. And then, so even if the study didn't touch deeply into health impacts, the emerging science is clear. Decomposing sargassum releases hydrogen sulfide and ammonium and can cause, as we said already, respiratory difficulties, cardiovascular, and neurological impacts. But what we also noticed in our survey is that there are also some mental health consequences that are related to sargassum issues and that are reported during the survey. So in the small island states where a large share of the population lives near the coast, the potential for widespread exposure is high. And new monitoring efforts like Madiner in St. Lucia are helping also to identify high-risk zones and inform public health response, also underlining again the importance of the holistic approach. So then, what is next? So a better understanding of sargassum's impact is key to a better response. Through the World Bank and through the ProBlue initiative specifically, we're supporting this through notably economic analysis, data generation, systematization of lessons learned and success stories, fostering local knowledge, which is key. And also we've heard a lot on how can we learn from other neighboring countries on what are the solutions available, capacity building, and also support for early warning system. So we do believe in a two-track approach, combining public action to relieve vulnerable communities, especially the fishers, and enabling environment for private sector innovation to learn also from sustainable solutions that we've just heard, but also backed up by smart public investment. So in a resources constraint setting, it's vital to prioritize where, how, and when to act. Impact mapping and forecasting can help countries respond effectively and efficiently. So just as a word of conclusion, and I hope I still have you guys with me, there's still so much to learn, but with targeted data, data-driven strategy, and also the use of innovative and blended finance that the World Bank can bring to the table, we can turn the tide on sargassum, protecting livelihoods, ecosystem, and supporting the economies. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer to any questions after this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for concluding so brilliantly the session. Before we will break, I promise. I just want to share with you a video we worked on with Global Planet about Sargassum and about the Sargassum Hub, which is a tool where we worked really hard to bring all this information on one website so everyone around the region can have access. Are we good to go? It's just 2 minutes, so we should be good. Okay, you know what? We'll do that after the break because we can't find a way to put the sound on. It's all right. So let's meet in like 15, 20 minutes so we can do the last session, which will be about cooperation. We'll have 5 panelists, amazing panelists, of course, and we'll be talking about data to policy. How do we make sure that there is collaboration, cooperation at every single level, not only from data to policy, from policy to data, but across the different sectors. Thank you so much for everyone. And we'll do it afterwards. Okay, let's have the break. Just to remind you, after the panel, we have dinner. So everyone is invited to stay. Dinner will start between 6:45 and 7, and we'll go on through the night. So please stay with us.
You know, but like
Une seule question. Une minute? Non, pas une minute. Non, mais une minute, je présente, et par contre, pas plus, quoi. Ah oui, oui. Parce que sinon, je l'ai. Ouais, ouais, ouais. Et puis... sorry.
On lance la vidéo?
Non, on n'a pas la faire.
On la fait pas?
On n'a pas le temps. Ah, peut-être ça peut faire revenir les gens. Attends. T'as raison. Attends, j'aimerais juste me remettre au bon endroit. Faut se mettre là. Donc, ce sera celle-là après en plein écran. Et ouais, et après, là, tu peux lancer la vidéo. Ouais, ouais, non, mais on a la bourre et non, si, c'est grave. Parce que allez, Audrey. On va mettre la vidéo pour faire venir le monde. Mettre la vidéo pour faire revenir le monde. Voilà la vidéo de l'OSIS, je sais de quoi elle parle. Ok. On fait une photo, ça va envoyer aussi sur le. Oh, maintenant, je sais que tu es en mode. Sinon, maintenant. Non, mais par contre, il faut que. Tu peux là, il faut accélérer. Ouais, ouais, ouais. Ça va? Ça va? Il y a le son cette fois-ci?
Plein écran, c'est ici.
Je pense que tu double-cliques. Attends, je fais à l'envers, je capte pas.
Ouais,
Voilà.
c'est bon, c'est bon, c'est bon.
C'est bon?
Là.
Il faut un écran tactile, c'est ça. We will be restarting soon. If you guys can go back to your seats.
Sargassum is increasing the level of poverty in the affected areas because once it beaches, you can do fishing, you can do any fish-related activity.
The touristic industry is also really a big part of this because most of their beaches are littered or spread with a lot of sargassum. That makes it really hard, the cost of cleaning, and also not nice for all the patrons.
Sargassum, a type of floating brown algae, originates from the Sargasso Sea. While it plays a crucial role in the ocean, providing habitat for marine life, its unchecked growth has become a crisis.
The fact that we are now experiencing sargassum in various parts of the world is an indication that it's moved away from local challenge to a global challenge.
We need to deploy all the scientific tools available to us, from satellites to collection of in-situ data, to understand the motion of this sargassum globally. By understanding the problem is always part of the solution.
A tool has been created to bridge the gap between technical experts and decision makers. The Sargassum Information Hub is a unique, centralized platform designed to empower communities, researchers, and decision makers with information on where to find data, scientific insights, and information on sargassum monitoring and forecasting.
So GeoBlue Planet has made easy access. If at the click of a button, you can get the information you require. Everything can be done rapidly. If all of the information is being put in one repository for you to be able to make informed decisions based on data. So thanks to GeoBlue Planet, they're making the world a smaller place.
GeoBlue Planet is the coastal and ocean arm of the Group on Earth Observations and works to drive Earth observation-based intelligence and solution for coastal and ocean challenges. GeoBlue Planet unites experts from academia, governments, and regional bodies to centralize sargassum knowledge and ensure actionable insights for decision makers. Its working group supports monitoring efforts to enhance forecasting, data dissemination, and decision-making tools.
Without access to data, there's really no freedom. So this means freedom.
All right, everyone, let's start again the last session before we can head out to dinner and discuss some more. So hold your thoughts. And yeah, let's start the last session. That will be co-chaired by Charlotte Gully from the ADEME.
Thank you, Audrey. So I'm Charlotte Gully from the French Agency for Ecological Transition. I'm based in Martinique and I worked on Sargassum for 11 years now. So I'm very, very, very glad to be at the UNOC and talk about Sargassum. So we'll have a panel about how science can influence policy, because last year you saw a lot of scientific paper about Sargassum on different subjects. And local authorities need science. They need answer. They want to know where does it come from? Where does Sargassum come from? What to do with Sargassum? What quantities will we have in the future? What's the impact of Sargassum? A lot of questions science can answer. But how to transfer all this knowledge, all these scientific projects to local authorities? So that's what we are going to speak about. So I'm gonna be with Jane Nurse from Grenada, from the Global Gateway from the European Commission in Grenada, with me. Come with me. We're gonna sit all together. I'm calling Ludovic Mollier from the French National Research Institute, the IRD. Yeah, with us today. Gabrielle Laric from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Lucille Rossin from the SPORAC. And Audrey Asson from GeoBlue Planet. So we're gonna have a global talk together. So no more PPTs, just talk. So we are a lot of French people right around the table, so we'll have to deal with our terrible accents. Sorry, but hopefully we've got Jane. Thank you. So just we are running out of time, so I'm gonna just skip into the subject directly, and to have some direct feedback from the field about the needs about science. So Jane, can you talk more about your global gateway approach, but more specifically your call for projects within the task force, and maybe what criteria did you define to select companies on your call for project, or does science help you doing that job? So we want to know more about that.
Thank you, Charlotte. You're putting me straight on the spot. No, thank you so much for having me on the panel today. And I also just want to, quickly before I answer your question, still take the time to thank you for the organization. I'm a shy public speaker, so I really enjoy this little intimate setting. And thank you to everybody who stayed with us. This is the hardcore, so well done for sticking with us. Now, regarding your question, I've had the great opportunity to support the government of Grenada through the Global Gateway Sargassum Valorization Initiative since February of this year. And I've been embedded with the Ministry of Climate Resilience, Environment and Renewable Energy, as well as with the recently established Ministry of the Blue Economy and Marine Affairs. And I actually got into this process as a private stakeholder from the private sector. So I guess I have an in and out foot, and also as a geeky nerd. So I really appreciate the science aspect. So this is a perfect question. And what we did with the assessment of the proposals, essentially the government put out a call for expressions of interest, as my colleague Ambassador Ino mentioned earlier. We received over 30 different proposals. And we split the assessment through a joint task force approach. So we had a national task force that included members from, and especially technical experts from the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority, and so forth, additional key experts. And then on the EU side, we had additional experts and also partners from the FAO, SASI team. And so in tandem, we developed and looked at criteria like, what's the company profile, technical feasibility, financial feasibility, how does it fit into our local context? So the diversity of proposals was great, from forecasting to valorization, everything. And proposals that were the short list of 13 and proposals that were taken out weren't necessarily taken out because they were weak proposals, but because we took a very strong valorization approach. So can these solutions be applied to our local context? Can they pay for themselves long term? Are they appropriate for the small scale of our island? And so talking about science, actually I was talking to Nikki in a break earlier. So for instance, the forecasting, we always want to jump to collection, but it's the forecasting that's the first step. And there we need to look at what tools actually make sense, what solutions make sense within our local context. So each step of the value chain will ask very specific questions that will then inform what solutions, which valorization tactics can be used long term. I don't want to bore you with too much because I know we have other questions, but I'm very happy to get back into it. Just to say, science is absolutely critical, especially because we need to benchmark, and against those benchmarks, we can then find the right solution that are appropriate for our local context.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Maybe can you tell us more about the next steps and how to coordinate your project with the other international programs that are coming to Grenada? Because I know there are lots.
Yeah, it's an influx, pun intended. No, it's an excellent question. So I think the first steps that we've taken is to understand, and we're still in the process of understanding the national context and the needs. And then based on that, you're going almost concentrically in larger circles, regional within the small OECS or smaller developing island states, wider Caribbean region, and then innovations that are coming from Europe, for instance. I mean, the European Union has been incredibly involved and instrumental in facilitating this process. And so I wouldn't say it's an easy dynamic or a easy process to navigate. My friends will know me as somebody who's quite blunt and no nonsense, so I'm not going to mince words. I do feel that there's a little bit of we're stepping on each other's toes at this point in time. And that being said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that we have to coordinate to take the baton and hand it over where it's required. So one of the examples I see, for instance, also with the valorization approach, and keep in mind, that is not all of Sargassum. That's just an aspect because we have so much more Sargassum and there's a national context. So this is one pillar of what we need to do. But within that, it is also about mapping the solutions, which scale they're at. Are they pilot? Are they already operational? Are they at a place where they're ready to scale up? Do they have 2 or 3 year experience in the field already? And then mapping it with the right kind of financial institutions or development agencies and partners. And I think this is where this is really important, having that coordination, having the transparency, and having respect for all the partners involved in the process, so that it is not a competition for who gets to play with which partner or which country, but that we actually really find the synergies and build on top of each other's work and support each other in the process.
Thank you very much, Jane. Yeah, we talked about that during the launching of Sargassum, and we had a little workshop between financial institutions and trying to cooperate more, not to step into each other, like you said. Hopefully, it will get better in the next few months. I hope so. Yeah. Let's move on to Gabrielle from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. From the perspective of the ministry, what do you expect from science on Sargassum?
I have well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to speak. And second of all, I want to make it absolutely clear that I am no expert on Sargassum per se, and I am not a scientist. So what do we expect from science? At this stage, I don't think it's any more data, for instance, not to say that your research is not valued, but we have, I think, the data to act, which is why also like France launched It's a national plan to fight sargassum, so we do have the information. For the one that is lacking, we are trying to finance it to get all the information, of course. But from my perspective as an international negotiator, what we do need to see is what are the facts that are going to help us mobilize all the countries, because if we do want to move together, we have to show that it is a global problem. What I see often in international negotiations or international fora, I never know, is that some country will bring forward one of their regional issues, for instance, sargassum, but you could think of like mountain countries that they have their own issues. And other country will say, well, that is not our priority, so why should we push for it? So what we really need to have is some expertise that say how it is a global issue and how we need to mobilize all the partners to move forward. And of course, in the regional cooperation system, we can move forward, but it's also how we make those links. And I think the science in that can be instrumental, because we don't always see what can be done, and we have tons of priorities to push forward, and we need you to help us, like, take that step in a sense.
So you need key figure, key recommendation, global recommendation and figure from based on science, obviously. Yeah, I got it. I'm just, I will get back to you soon. But Lucille Rossin, can you within the SPORAC, you've got a Sargassum working group, and I know you've got some meeting lately, the Sargassum working group. Can you bring to us a resume of your last workshop and maybe the key information on science needs regarding science?
Yes, totally. Thank you. So in the SPORAC, we conducted a survey among the 18 contracted parties, and 14 answered. And according to this survey, 10 territories reported a significant impact affecting tourism and quality of life, with very high annual cleanup costs. In addition to the consequences of Sargassum stranding, this survey also revealed the negative role of certain cleaning practice, that it's very important. These cleaning practices, there are coastal erosion and destruction of coastal ecosystem, accumulation in remote but often important biodiversity sites, etc. Few countries have formalized national management plans for sargassum, and most efforts focus on beach cleaning without an extensive understanding of the ecological impact of interventions. C'est un peu dur de s'entendre. Urgent needs have been identified, including assessing these impacts, developing monitoring and forecasting system, mobilizing sustainable financing, and seeking solutions for valorizing sargassum, despite the challenge posed by the presence of heavy metals and plastic pollution. So in response to this challenge, we merged two working groups in the framework of the Cartagena Convention, the SPO, the Sargassum Working Group, and the LBS, which is the other protocols, which works on pollution, plastic pollution generally. And the experts of these two working groups propose an action plan based on two pillars: strengthening scientific research and evidence-based management while facilitating regional cooperation. It was the core of the working group. The goal is to create a balance between recognizing the beneficial ecologic role of sargassum, we heard that before, in the open seas, and the need to effectively manage its destructive strandings to protect coastal ecosystem and local economy. So in terms of research, the idea is to fill knowledge gaps, to develop an extensive scientific understanding of sargassum, its behavior, its impact, and potential solution. In terms of management, the proposal is to promote best practices by focusing on the development and implementation of effective and sustainable management strategies based on scientific knowledge. Strengthening regional cooperation aims to improve coordination and collaboration between the various regional and national entities involved in the Sargassum management. The goal is to ensure a consistent and integrated approach. In addition, of course, we have some proposition of communication, awareness raising activities, and the search for sustainable funding, such as the SARCOP2 project, but not all this, also this one. The action plans represent a comprehensive roadmap for addressing the complex problem Sargassum in the Caribbean, emphasizing the importance of collaboration, science, and sustained financial commitment. So we are a partner to the SARCOP project in order to implement the design action plan. For us, the challenge is not to duplicate studies and works. So it's not another action plan, but it's an integrated action plan in strong collaboration with all the other partners. To resume this working group, I will say 2 words: networking, decoupling.
Thank you very much, Lucille. So that was a testimony from the ground regarding needs and science, and maybe we will now look at the answer, because I know Ludovic has some answer about your needs regarding gathering scientists. So Ludovic, regarding stakeholders' needs, how can scientists organize themselves to better synthesize scientific work and make recommendations?
Well, thank you, Charlotte. First of all, I'm not a scientist as well, worth mentioning. I'm facilitating the link between science and policy. And I will say, first of all, they cannot organize themselves just by themselves. I mean, if we look at setting up a science policy interface with the idea of having an effective and useful dissemination of the results of the science, but also by the decision makers and the stakeholders, we need more to look at the process on how to set up this type of interface. Scientific knowledge is extremely abundant. It's quite diverse. A lot of different type of scientific papers are produced. We need to find it, to understand it. We need to articulate them because they are coming from different discipline areas. And usually we need to do this in a short period of time, which is not easy. From the scientific community, there is different kind of tool to do that. There is, for example, individual research assessment. There is systematic review. IRD, I've done one recently. My colleagues from IRD are there. They will tell you more, maybe. It was supported by the French Development Bank. There is also meta-analysis. And in my team at IRD, we are doing scientific collective assessment. The key challenging is not so much about doing a summary of the knowledge. I think that can be easily done, even though it's difficult sometimes to ensure that researchers from various disciplines can understand each other. They've got their languages, their wordings. But the key challenging is making sure that is being used, that is being understood and owned by the stakeholders and the decision makers. To do that, we need to engage more into the process, which is need to be co-developed, than the deliverable, which at the end is usually just a book and sometimes it ends up on a shelf, dusty one. And so the idea is to create these interfaces, well-structured, where first of all, if we look at scientific collective assessment, we start with a gathering, a workshop with all the key stakeholders coming from ministries. We talk about the need to make the silos dense between different ministries. So that's a key element. We talk to the main ministry in charge of the topic that need to be addressed, but we also bring along other ministries, civil society organization, of course, socioeconomic actors. And the idea is to first discuss what is the challenge, how we can define the challenges with some scientists, decline it into several questions. And then the next step is more about creating this interface between two committees. We create interdisciplinary scientific committees and another committees, which is coming more from the non-academic actors. And our roles as a non-scientist is to facilitate the dialogue between the two committees. And at the end, there is a restitution that we are trying to make it as broad as possible with different tools such as conferences, technical workshop, podcast, radio, and sometimes also comic books, which is quite useful to reach a broader audience.
Thank you. So about Sargassum, you are beginning this kind of approach, right? And can you tell us more about how long will it last? What will be the main deliverable? And yeah, more about Sargassum, the Sargassum approach.
Yeah, Sargassum. We engage with Expertise France to start a new scientific collective assessment. The idea is not to reinvent the wheel, but to build on what is known. So the idea is to first do this workshop at the end of the year, probably, and to start creating the scientific interdisciplinary committees and also this non-scientific committee, and to define what needs to be addressed, what are the key topics that we need to engage with in order to know what science has been produced. And then we're going to carry on until the end, which is about the restitution and discussions with all the stakeholders involved.
Well, thank you. I already see some key question like what can we do with Sargassum offshore? Where are the Sargassum coming from, and why are they growing so much this year? So I think there's a lot of work on that, and will it be an international panel of scientists working on this group, on this expertise? How do you ensure you've got some people from different countries and independent scientists?
Yeah, that's an important question, how we select the researchers. The idea is to, first of all, look at the publications. That's a key criteria for us. Then we try to balance the committee, looking at how we can engage with researchers from the different countries that are being impacted by the challenging. And also we look at gender balances as well. And the idea is to have a small group, 15 researchers from different disciplines, because the challenge is very broad. So we need to have experts from different fields. And we also look at the link of interest, trying to find out if there is conflict of interest, and if there are conflict of interest, we look for other researchers.
Thank you. It's really, really interesting. We are all looking forward to these initiatives. Really, thanks. Then Audrey, you work at the JBlue Planet, and we already had an example of the work you're doing there on Sargassum prevision. But maybe can you tell us more about the Sargassum working group of JBlue Planet, and what is the future of this working group?
The future. We do prediction at Mercator, so that's probably a good question. So I'm not going to go into the details. You have some details here, but at JBlue Planet, we really aim to bridge the gap between data and decision making. We do this on a lot of different topics. We do marine litter, we do fisheries, we do eutrophication, and we do Sargassum. We never really start working on a specific topic unless it's required or requested actually by a group. what the way we want to do it, I really like what Ludovic said, because we're definitely aligned, and it's music to my ear to hear other people saying what I think. But it's basically in the working group, we do not want to have just experts, because experts talking amongst each other is just another scientific conference, and and what we want is to have an equilibrium between the technical experts and representative of end users. We sometimes call them super end users. We have a few members from states, from ministries, but what we like is go even one step above and look at, for instance, the IOC Caribbean, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, as regional team of the Caribbean region. We work with UNEP, we work with FAO, we work with UNDP. So they are basically brokers of our users. And then we go around that wheel with, we do stakeholder engagement, we do cooperation, co-design, and capacity development. And in the case of Sargassum, our main task is to discuss. So you have experts on one side and you have user representative on the other side, is what you guys need, because it's a two-way discussion. Because the decision makers, they need to know what is available. I think the first event I organized on Sargassum, there was this guy from a hotel, and he said, yeah, I want to know next year on that Saturday if there's going to be Sargassum, because I'm renting my hotel for a wedding, and I need to be able to tell that person if there's going to be Sargassum or not, and if I can remove the Sargassum from the beach ahead of time. And I was like, okay, there is some explanations, some teaching to be done there. So on their side, they understand what they can ask from us. And on our side, we also understand that it's not like science. Like, we don't need that absolutely perfect information about anything. We just need information to support the decision maker. We can't have just scientists talking amongst each other about the nitty-gritties of everything. We need to find the information in the data we already have. You said that we already have enough data. I would beg to differ. Like, we still need to have better information on the mass, what is actually out there, and not just if there is or isn't Sargassum, because this will help us do predictions. And in the prediction, there is value for early warning systems and so on. And so anyways, in short, it's about discussions. GeoBluePlanet, we focus on monitoring and forecasting. We don't do impacts, we don't do blue economy, but they are our users as well. So they're in the discussion. And our main activity project is the Sargassum Information Hub. I know all of you looked at the video when you were taking your seats at the end of the break. We can put it on again later. But it is a platform where we try to put all of the entire community's work there, where you will be able to find all the different forecasting system, all the different monitoring. And GeoBluePlanet, the future of GeoBluePlanet, we are contribution-based. We are not a project. We do not last for 18 months. We are not the SPORAC. We do not have member states. We don't have a legal entity. We are an initiative. So anyone can join. Anyone can contribute to the activities we're doing. And it's not if my European Horizon project stops that GeoBluePlanet will stop. We have an office in the US, we have an office in Europe, we have an office in Korea, and we're moving forward this way, we've been staffed for 15 years now. So this is how it works, and how we work on having continuity, because continuity is very important. And we've seen that on so many different topics. Anyways, I'm speaking too much. That's it for me.
Yes, we have to close that, so. So just to close this session, because we've got to let the room for another meeting, so we are running out of time. I'm just gonna ask Gabrielle, so how do this approach on gathering scientists and advising Sargassum managers been maintained in time? Because this approach, for example, is 2 years. Is to a much more longer perspective, but mainly based on observation. So how could we organize this coordination concretely through the next years.
I'm going to answer, but just first, I wasn't saying we had enough data per se, but enough data to decide that that was going to be a political thing and that we wanted to take it forward. But please do continue your research. Do not stop. I'm sorry if I was not being clear enough. For your question, it's important that we have, let's say, coalition of scientists, for example. I'm going to take two things that were a success, the climate COPs, even though I'm sure many of you can say that they are not successes and we should get rid of COPs and blah, 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 but still they allow us to move forward on climate issues, and the negotiations for the global plastics treaty, for the global treaty on plastics. For these two forums of discussions, we do meet regularly with scientists, and they come together from various backgrounds and they're organized, and I mean, as a coalition, but something concrete. And they come and they explain what we need to do and what we can push forward. And in terms also of motions, you know, in decision-making at the international level, the language is sometimes very bizarre. It's very technical, but in a political way. So it's very different from the scientist language, but they come forward with proposals, and we discuss and we see what we can do to move the topic forward. And also the second thing that the scientists can do is also alert their authorities, for instance, parliaments. We also work closely with parliament for the assembly in France, because they also push the governments forward. And that's what we need. We need to have also our highest authority take care of the problem and saying this is something that we need to tackle also at the global stage. So what we really need from, I mean, I don't want to say what you have to do, but what I've seen from my experience is that when scientists come together with all the authorities and all their backgrounds, and we can talk and we can prepare for the deadlines, whether it's the UN Environmental Assembly or the COPs or whatever, that's when we can make a change and a difference. And it stayed during the times when COPs have been going on for a few years now. The Treaty on Plastic, I mean, it was in 2022 that we took the resolution at the UNA, at the UN Environmental Assembly. You got it. So I think that's how.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback on particularly what Audrey was saying. No, I love the approach, and especially when you were saying to not be a stickler for everything having to be 100% correct, because when you're trying to implement, you're trying to make a decision. You're not trying to have 110% or 99.99% certainty. You need to have enough information that you can move the process forward. And so some of the questions that we're coming up with now within, for instance, the valorization process, everybody wants to jump to that part, but there's a whole pre-valorization, let's say, runway that needs to be covered before we can valorize. And so we will have questions like in Grenada, and I'm sure other small island developing states, how is this type of material going to hold up in a rough Atlantic coastal conditions? What kind of barriers, what type of materials, how long is it going to degrade? How often do we need to change it? What is the most efficient substrate mix for biogas development utilizing organic waste and sargassum? Those are the kind of questions. They're very practical questions, but they're very important to understand, because otherwise you may invest in a pilot program, but you can't scale it. Same thing. Okay, we set as a target 10,000 tons of sargassum we want to process in 2026. But how much sargassum is coming where, at what times? And I think Aurélie from the UBEP project brought up a map I was extremely happy about, showcasing that in our island context, the communities that are affected the most have the least money. There is no hotel sector that's going to pay for the cleanup actions, right? So we're looking at how can these communities actually benefit from our valorization efforts? Where do you do the collection? How far in or how near shore can you collect because of the ecological impacts? And we don't have any of those questions covered. That's where we do lack capacity to answer those questions locally. That's where we need to tap into regional or coordination. And yes, there's a lot of studies. I've been trying to read a lot of studies. I'm like floating in studies right now, but I'm not a scientist. So once again, we need to have that bridge where somebody can say, oh, we've done this meta-analysis, and for that question that you're seeking, these are maybe the right people for you to connect with. And so this is a kind of, just to piggyback up on, didn't want to go into the whole value chain piece, but I think it's really important to come back to what are applicable questions and how can we answer them with the resources that are given to us.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, that's interesting, and that's totally what we are planning to do within Sarcoop, to have some meetings about some precise subject like biogas and gathering stakeholders and scientists and discussing more particularly on this topic, for example. But thank you all. I'm gonna let the mic to Audrey to end this session and the events.
The event is not finished. So yeah, I'm just going to give you some concluding remarks. Thank you all for your participation, especially the panelists, the speakers, for your thoughtful insight and wavering commitment throughout this afternoon's events. We have seen some powerful reminder that the Sargassum crisis is complex and our collective response rooted in science, of course, collaboration and shared purpose can be even stronger. So from innovative research to regional partnership, the momentum we've built here and we're still building tomorrow will be inspiring, essential in addressing this crisis. So let's do this. Let's carry this forward, and I will invite you now for dinner at the hotel restaurant, where we can have more discussions. And once again, thank you for being here. Let's stay in touch. I will be sending you the information, the recording, and of course that video that everyone watched during the break. I will be sending it to you. Also, the OECS forwarded us a video that we haven't had the time to show. That this will be shared as well. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. So Oriane reminded us that on the 12th, that's Thursday, there will be the third leg of this this event. So we had earlier the Blue Zone, now this offsite, and in the Whale on Thursday, I think at 5 p.m. in the 3 Ocean Pavilion. Nope. In the Medusa room, you're right, sorry, in the Medusa room. I can actually send everyone an email reminding that. There will be this general public presentation session on Sargassum, so you're all invited to that if you're not having an ingestion of Sargassum right now. So see you at the restaurant, and see you on Thursday. Thank you. Thank you.